Everybody would like the opportunity to be able to stay and age independently in their own home. Did you know that Community Medicaid is one of the payer sources for home care services? Stay tuned to find out how. Today on the Dana Dr. Pearl Show, we are going to be discussing Community Medicaid, the myths on Medicaid, and exactly what it means for someone in the community to apply for Medicaid. I'm speaking with my friend today, Mr. Sri Saperstein, who is a partner at Salem, Shore and Saperstein, which is elder lawyers. So let's start from the beginning, because I think basic concept is important. What exactly is Community Medicaid?
So in our practice, when people come to us to learn about Community Medicaid, it's really twofold. The first thing we tell people is it's going to become a supplemental insurance policy. So a lot of people out there are very nervous, oh no, I don't want Medicaid because my doctor takes Medicare or my doctor takes AARP. And the first and most important thing to tell people is, listen, Medicaid is not going to supplant, it's not going to take over your insurance. You're not going to walk into a doctor's office, drop your Medicaid card and say, don't worry about the Medicare, I don't use that anymore. It's actually the opposite. When you get on Community Medicaid, the first benefit, it's going to become another insurance policy after Medicare. And if you have a secondary policy, it's going to come after that as well. So instead of walking into a pharmacy or doctor and saying, all I have is Medicare, now you have Medicare and Medicaid. And although I don't think any insurance is perfect, this is really a byproduct of getting on Community Medicaid, and it's really very, very helpful and very underutilized. The main reason why people come to us to learn about Community Medicaid is to get the care at home for free from aides as many hours a day as possible.
Okay, let me stop you. So for someone who wants to apply for Community Medicaid, those individuals are people that are going to be requiring in-home services. So if someone calls you up and says, my mom, broke her leg, but she's probably going to be okay in 6 weeks, that's not someone who would benefit from Community Medicaid.
They would benefit, but it would really not be a long-term benefit. By the time the program gets set up, which could be, depending on your county, 4 to 6 weeks, or if there's evaluations, maybe 2 months, it's not really for someone that's going to be on and off that quickly. Most of our clientele, if they ask us, hey, how long do you really think I should be utilizing this program? I would say if you think it's going to be a 5 to 6 month ongoing situation, it's a great idea to learn about it now, and it's a great idea to get a process started.
Okay. So also when you're talking about the insurances, when someone has a primary Medicare, a secondary Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then Medicaid, do you tell them to get rid of the secondary?
Great question. So that's a very common question. And the easy answer is we don't like people to guess, which means if you come in and I tell you, hey, Medicare and Medicaid are actually really good, and you go and drop your AARP plan, and then there's an issue that arises, you're going to come back and say, why'd I do that? My advice is very simple. When you learn about Medicaid, you make a quick phone call to your doctor and say, hey, listen, I have Medicare and AARP. If I then only have Medicare and Medicaid, am I covered? Check. If he says good, your next phone call is to the pharmacist. Hey, listen, mom or dad, they're on these 6 medicines. Right now I have Medicare. Paying for the AARP is a little bit cutting into my assets, and I don't feel like it's comfortable. Can I just have Medicare and Medicaid? They'll be able to look up for you in a matter of 5 minutes' time if all mom or dad's prescriptions are covered, and then you can confidently say, okay, covered. And if things change in the future, you can always buy back onto that supplemental. So it's not a necessity unless the doctor and pharmacist tell you it should be still something you're paying for.
Understood, because that's one of the most common questions that we get here. Should we drop our secondary? And I always say, call Saperstein. I don't know.
Right, that's usually the safe answer. Well, my wife doesn't give that all the time.
I like that. I say, call Saperstein. So when you're talking about Community Medicaid, another one of the questions that we get every day, or one of the conversations that we have is, my parents won't qualify because there's a 5-year look back. People don't understand that there's different Medicaids, there's different reasons for Medicaid, and Community Medicaid, technically, there's no real look back. There is a look back, but not really.
Right.
So how's that go?
It's
not 5 years.
Just to touch on that concept, the nursing home, which is long-term care, there is a 5-year look back of documentation. However, when it comes
financial documentation.
Financial documentation, correct. However, when it comes to home care in New York, there is essentially no look back. So, you can title a speech to make it attractive and say how to be a millionaire on Medicaid because last month I was. But we always give clients the same example. It is possible to have 3 people line up the first day of a month. Someone that has $5,000, someone that used to have $50,000, and someone that had $2.5 million. All 3 of those people will qualify the first day of a month as long as they are all under a certain amount by that time. Medicaid for home care does not look back. They don't really care how much money you had last month. They certainly don't care what you had 3 months ago, a year ago, or 5 years ago. And I would say the New York Medicaid is the ugly step sibling that Medicaid in general would not like you to know about.
So when people come to you and you tell them that, do they think that they're doing something illegal? Do they think that something's wrong with the system?
So the first thought is often, wow, that sounds too good. And we're going to get to that a little more specific because how I look on Medicaid with free care is eerily similar to how I looked on Medicaid, how I looked on private pay, but I was having to pay out of pocket. I would say these days, though, that when people hear a little bit about it, they usually go and they speak to somebody like a friend, a grandparent, a cousin, and they find out that there's a little bit truth behind it. The facts are very skewed. A lot of people are saying a lot of different things, but when you start digging around, you start hearing that this thing may be legit. And by the time they come to us, they're usually not as skeptical, but they're telling you, listen, I hear about it, I want to believe in it, but I need to learn about that first because I want to make sure it's not too good to be true.
Well, you know what I tell people is that the state of New York wants people to stay home. It's less expensive for them to house them in the home than it is into a nursing home. So the state has its different rules that apply for home care versus a nursing home.
They'd rather bleed slowly than hemorrhage.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
You're a
That's
nurse.
true.
That makes sense. You're the only one who likes blood.
That's true. But when you talk about nursing home versus community, the nursing home is still a 5-year look back at this point in
The
time.
financial look back is 5 years, correct?
Right. So so families that call us up or you're talking to them, if they have $500,000 in their mother's name today, what do you tell them to do?
Run.
Right.
If they have $500,000 today and they need home care.
And they need home care. They need help at home.
So there are a number of planning tools. There are simple, where if you have trust in your children, you can just literally transfer the funds to them, which is very beneficial because if you trust them, they're able to use that money to help you out if you ever need. Like if Medicaid covers 90% of your bill, they could cover the other 10. Some people, based on their family situation, don't want to put their money in their children's name. So those are the people that come in and say, I think I should put it into a trust, which is a nice planning tool. But the most important thing to know about a trust, whatever money you put into an irrevocable trust to get on Medicaid, none of that principal can be used on you again. So if mom moves $500,000 into that trust, that's okay for home care Medicaid. But you guys can't dip into that trust to help mom out. So every family situation is different. Sometimes some people will put some money in their children's name and the other money in trust.
So the idea that community Medicaid was for the poor people is no more. That used to be the way people thought of it. Now we're thinking of it more as an insurance policy, as something that is really to help and benefit you stay home.
Definitely mainstream. And to echo your point before, Medicaid knows what they're doing as a program. And although, yeah, it sounds like they're spending a lot of money, the cost of nursing home care is $16,000 a month. Whatever they're paying is going to be tremendously less per year, per month, per quarter, whatever it may be, if they keep you at home.
So let's walk through a typical scenario. So you have a daughter come in with the mother and the father. They're still married. Mom needs care, dad does not need care. What do we do? We talk to the father, we talk to the daughter, not the father, the husband, we talk to the daughter. Do they stay married? Do they have to get divorced? Because I was just reading that, that they're talking about stopping the spousal refusal.
So spousal refusal is much more important in the realm of nursing home than home care. What that means for nursing home Medicaid, if I need care tomorrow, I can actually move my assets into my spouse's name and I would be eligible rather quickly. In the home care setting, that's not as important because when it comes to home care Medicaid, whether you move assets to a spouse or whether you're divorced or whether your spouse passed away, you can move those assets to your children. You can move those assets to your sister.
With no penalty.
Home care Medicaid does not care where that money goes as long as it's not in your name and you can show where you moved it to if it was recently.
See, and it's funny because people call up and then the next question that they say, well, what happens to my taxes? What happens to, how does it affect me in the long term?
Which are also very standard and good logical questions. New York State, at this point, you can gift over $5 million in a lifetime per person. Mom transfers $500,000 to one daughter. It's not a taxable event. You can file an informational gift tax return, but there's no taxes owed. It just means instead of $5 million, you're down to $4.5 million. The person receiving the gift never pays tax as the recipient of a gift. If that money earns some interest, then so be it.
Good. So community Medicaid, for the most part, are for people that want to stay at home. So let's say someone's home and they apply for Medicaid to receive home care services, and now they want to go to a nursing home. What kind of process is that?
So nursing home is an entirely different process. But what we tell clients is qualifying for home care Medicaid only helps and never hurts your nursing home aspects, because moving assets out of your name for home care do also have the byproduct of starting the 5-year clock for nursing home as well.
So with us now, when someone comes in and they're talking to you, so now we got the husband, we got the wife, we got the daughter. So they're agreed that they're going to transfer the money to the daughter. What happens next?
In the
And there's
home
nothing
care
else.
world,
There's nothing else. They have no IRAs. They have no stocks. They have a house. They own the house jointly, husband and wife. Okay. So what is it that you suggest that they do next?
so obviously depending on a multitude of factors, but the house, if it's owned husband and wife, predominantly will be an exempt asset. There's planning options that could be done in the future once she gets on Medicaid to prevent nursing home in the future. But for home care, it's usually going to be okay, depending on if it's less than $879,000 in value. It could go to the spouse if they want. There are a multitude of options from simple to complex.
Yeah, but I just want to say something. So when you're talking about the house as an exempt asset, only for when you're applying. But
You
it's
could
something
be
that,
on home care Medicaid
Yeah.
with that home forever. But
then
you
what
got to be
happens?
careful not to pass away with the house in your name alone.
Right, that's what happened to this family that I was talking to. So they did the Medicaid application for their mother because she didn't have any money. There was nothing. It was a very straightforward, easy application. The mother was on services for 3 years, but they never protected the house. Mom dies. They get a lien on the house for all the money that was spent
Right.
for the care of the mother.
Right.
And the family went ballistic. Because they're thinking they're getting the house. They're thinking that mom passed
Right.
away. They did the right thing.
So
and in the
assuming
end,
that was the only asset, ironically, there's an estate law in New York called heirs at law, which allows you to bypass the estate. Medicaid's only way to collect money is if you do an estate. So if people go on Medicaid, we often tell our clients, going on Medicaid's a big deal. So it's a lot going on. It's new. You don't have to necessarily jump and do something with the house right away. But once you qualify, once you start using the care, once you determine that the hours are enough for you, basically once you start running up a tab, learn about the options, because there are very simple options like what's called a life estate. There are complex options called a trust, but there are a lot of options out there where you can protect your property but also maintain your independence.
I understand.
Still pay all your bills, still pay the maintenance, the taxes, and have Medicaid and tax benefits.
See, I think that a lot of people think that if they go on Medicaid, they lose their house, they lose their income.
It's a bad myth, unfortunately.
We're going to get to that in a second, but that's not the reality of home care. I always say, like with the state of New York, they want you home. They want you to age in place, and the best way to do it is to protect your assets and protect your, what you have, and go on community Medicaid.
I would say, most importantly for people, get educated. After about an hour and a half of an education, you're going to understand that you can protect your income, you can protect your home, you can protect your liquid money, you can protect your IRA 401k, and still qualify for care. It's all about the education. It's not a matter of running in and saying, my lawyer told me to do that. Then you just walk around and you don't know why. There are pros and cons, but if you get educated, that difference of an hour and a half to 2 hours of your life may allow you to protect all your money, or it may allow you to stretch money. Instead of using it for 1 year, you may be able to stretch that money for 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, or they can
It's
just
arguably the greatest program in this country by far.
or they can watch our cable show.
Or they could watch a cable show numerous times,
Over and over and over.
take a multitude of notes,
And
or just instead sit for 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Well, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the myths of Medicaid and what does that actually mean to families in the community. Stay tuned.
They were always there for you. They cheered you on. and cheered you up. They always cared for you. So what happens when they need care? Who will you call? Who can you trust? At Reliance Home Senior Services, we're different. We take pride in providing outstanding service for your loved ones. All home care providers are $11.99 union employees. Call 718-475-2114 or visit RelianceHSSNY.com. Reliance Home Senior Services, because they deserve the very best.
At Medical House Calls with Compassion, our mission is simple: provide the highest quality and compassionate care for our patients. Our team has been treating patients from 18 to 100 plus for nearly 20 years, specializing in primary and preventative care, homebound patients, geriatrics, palliative care, and hospice, all in the comfort of our patients' own homes. Medical House Calls with Compassion, providing you with the best practitioners for the best care.
Welcome back to the Dana and Dr. Pearl Show. We're continuing our conversation with Mr. Zvi Saperstein on community Medicaid. Now we want to go into what the myths are, because there's a bunch of myths that you always talk about Medicaid. So the first myth is assets protection.
The first myth I would say is along those lines of, I have too many assets to qualify for home care.
Oh, that's a
And
terrible
we break it down to three categories. We break assets down to property, liquid money, and IRA 401k. So we're going to see the myth and we're going to see the reality. I think the first myth is my mom and dad have a house, they can't be on Medicaid. As we discussed in the earlier segment, there are many ways to protect the home, simple, medium, and complex. And there are many times you don't have to do anything with the home. The house will be protected. The second myth is, oh, wow, mom and dad, they saved up, they have $300,000. They sold the house, they have $500,000. Do we have to spend that all down to get free care at the end? The answer is unequivocally no. Number one rule in New York for home care Medicaid, liquid money. And what is liquid money? That means banking, money market, stock, anything that has cash value, maybe life insurance with cash value, no matter what it is. As long as the applicant is showing less than $15,750 in their name by the end of a month, they're really eligible for Medicaid the first day of the next month.
And let me ask you something. When you
Sure.
say applicant, what if that applicant is married? It's still
Applicant
15,700?
themselves, for only the one applying. So if I have $250,000 associated with my name, I don't really want to give up my money in life, but it's a lot. The only thing worse than giving up money is donating it to the state. So if I have $250,000, I can transfer, in this case, 240, 237, 242. Whatever it is, I could transfer to my spouse, I could transfer to my children, and today is March 5th. By April 1st, I'm actually eligible for Medicaid. New York, as we stated earlier, there is no look back.
Okay,
so whether you have
stop you.
50,000 or 500,000, it's going to be the same. Go ahead.
So if you're eligible April 1st, that means that's when you file.
Correct.
So people have to know that there's a difference between being eligible and the filing time. So when you file April 1st.
So it's eligible to file.
Okay. So when you're filing, let's just talk about filing for a second, because I think people get confused by that as well, because that's something that we deal with all the time. You file April 1st. When do they get accepted?
Good question. So it's county dependent. But in Nassau County, traditionally within 2 or 3 weeks, you have a caseworker appointed. By a week later, usually the caseworker reviewed the case. And if the paperwork is perfect, you could be accepted as quick as a month. If there are 1 or 2 things that need tidying up, maybe 6 weeks. If a caseworker looks at the case because they have a stack from here to the ceiling, maybe at most 2 months. But I'd say over the last 14, 15 years, you got to aim for about 4 to 6 weeks to get accepted, and probably along the same lines in New York City.
The thing that we talk about also is that when someone files with us, because we do the applications too, and they're not telling us everything, they don't understand. You have to tell us so that we know, because then it gets kicked back. They're asking for more documentation,
Right.
And then you have to resubmit it, but it just
slows
prolongs you down. Yeah.
I don't know why people do that for home care, because the reality is they're okay with your assets. You just have to show where they went. Kids get nervous. Oh no, it went to me. That's okay. Delaying your own and having your caseworker get upset because they turn around and say, "What about these 10 accounts?" You're only, you're stabbing yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Okay, so they get accepted, and then what's the next step for them?
After acceptance, they're not just starting the next day. Years ago, Medicaid would send somebody down to tell you, this is what you're getting in terms of your care. But that system's gone. Nowadays, once you get accepted, after getting acceptance, you have to take that Medicaid number, and a nurse from Maximus will come to look at you and determine that you can use some help, but not how much help.
Wait,
After Maximus,
but what is Maximus?
Maximus are, in our field, we call them Medicaid nurses. They're Medicaid eyes and ears. They're really making sure that you exist and you're a person in need of help.
Well, you have to have the need of help for over 90 days, or they don't qualify you.
Correct.
So it's an independent observer or assessor that's just coming in to make sure that your house is okay, you are who you say you are, your need of care is over 90 days, and then after that, what happens?
After that is the most important part of your process, which is the MLTC, the Managed Long-Term Care Company.
Choosing one.
These companies are tasked with coming to tell you how many hours a day they're willing to give you, and not that you're entitled to, which means it's a competitive business. So if you have MLTC-A come to your home and say, I'm going to give your mom 7 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you think that that's a little bit, you can have MLTC-B come and evaluate your mom a couple of days later, and if they're willing to give you 8 or 9 hours a day, you can sign up with their services. The nice thing is it's a competitive system.
Yeah, but it's all supposed to be they're supposed to be assessing you equally, though. Like it
Yes.
shouldn't be that big of a difference.
Well, so I used maybe a little bit high, but I have seen it go from 8 to 10. I've definitely seen it go from 6 to 7. But you're right. You're not going to see 6,
And then
and
12.
12.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
So when people come to you, because I'm sure this happens, and they say, oh, we're going to a lawyer to apply for community Medicaid, he's going to get me hours.
Right. So that's very much on wishful thinking. We will get you educated. We will help you protect your assets and give you the options for protecting them. We'll also talk, which we didn't talk about yet, we'll help you protect your income. But in terms of hours, you can have, the head of any hospital you want at that evaluation. In reality, it's going to come down to their checklist and what they determine.
Yeah.
A lot of luck and a lot of prayer.
Yeah. So I tell families that there has to be a physical need. It can't just be that you want your mom to be watched.
No babysitting.
No
allowed.
babysitting. So there's no, they do housekeeping, but not
And
only.
help with ambulating. We call it AT&T. Help with ambulating, help with toileting, help with transferring. Those are things that garner hours.
It's funny.
I probably got that from you, but you
Probably
forgot.
did. I did forget. Well, I'm older than you.
It happens.
It,
It'll happen to me one day.
Yeah, well, hopefully
But
I
not
can
for a
see
long
that.
time.
No, that's not true. It happens sooner than you think. So families are okay with coming to a lawyer, because we hear that a lot. We actually hear from some managed cares that they don't want to take business from lawyers because they assume you've already guided them to get the longer hours.
Right. So I think that the mistake that exists out there is sometimes whether it's a company or a lawyer, will tell you that they know the right MLTCs. Look, we tell our clients, these are the popular MLTCs out there. We're going to not tell you the ones that and we base that on what past clients tell us. So if I have a client call me up and say, hey, John Doe MLTC gave me 5 hours and my mom needs a lot more, and I know their mom, I'm going to make a mental note, don't refer them right now. The big boys out there, people traditionally know.
So let's talk about the second myth, though, the income, because that's a big question that we get here, and that's everybody's fear, is that they're going to take their income away. There
Right.
was a time years ago, I know that when I was starting, pre you were still in diapers, but when you would have you had X amount of dollars that you can have, everything else went back to the state.
Right.
It's not that way anymore.
No, it's actually probably the best part of this program, and probably the biggest myth out there, and also the saddest. Because you can have clients, we're talking about people who move money, transfer money, sell houses. What if, I never had a lot of money, and all I really had, let's say I was a city teacher, I was an employee here, or a pension, and I have a good income. And that means my apartment may cost me $2,000 a month, but my income may be $3,500 a month. And probably the biggest myth out there is I have too much income to be on community Medicaid. And you will find people not go on the program because they didn't know better. And I think the most important thing, we teach income, it's based on 2 words. The English word keep and the other word of utilize. And what does that mean? So the law is very, very simple but different. And that law says in New York, when you go on community Medicaid, and let's use the example, let's say my income is $25.75. When you go on home care Medicaid in New York, the income that I make, that $25.75, that still comes to my name. The first $8.75 of that income is mine to keep. Keep is another way of saying Medicaid doesn't care what you do with that. Spend it, pay for something, donate it, take out family out to dinner. They don't care. $875 is yours. And a lot of people say that's great, but hey, my apartment cost me $1,500 a month, or I make $2,575 of income. What about the rest of it? And that's where the education comes in. New York has a very, very, very generous program that is known as a charitable pooled income. And the way that works is I make my income $2,575. $875 of my income I get to keep. If I happen to pay for a secondary insurance, I get to keep even more money to pay for it. So if I pay $300 for AARP, I can keep another $300. So now that's $1,175. But the question is, okay, I make $2,575. I get to keep $875, right? What about my $1,700 overage? What do I do with the extra money? And some clients, their overage is $500. Some clients, their overage is $3,000. But this is the best part about it. This charitable pooled income, what they do is when you file and get on Medicaid, your income comes to you. $875 is yours to spend. You're not losing it. My hypothetical $1,500 or $1,775 goes out of my name directly to this charitable pooled income.
But you choose. You choose
of your choice, correct. There's many of them. It's not a donation. They take out a nominal fee. So if I send them $1,500, let's say they take out about $100 or $150. And the balance that's there is available for me to use on any and all of my bills. What does that mean? They're not going to give me back my money. But if I send them $1,700 and they take out $150, I now have a $1,550 allowance to use there. And if my rent is $1,500, I send them my rent bill, which takes me 2 minutes a month. They pay it, and I'm done. So even though I don't get to keep all my income, there's no limit to how much income I can utilize as long as I have bills to offset it. So if I have an income of $3,500, but my credit card bill is $1,000 and my rent is $1,500, great. So before Medicaid, I had to private pay, but I was living on $2,500 a month of income. Fast forward to Medicaid, I'm getting care for free, some, if not all of it, and the only difference in my life is that roughly $100 and change a month that I give up to the charity. So I look almost the same way as I did before, but I'm saving $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on care.
So what happens if someone makes too much money, they make $6,000 and their bills come out to $2,000?
Great question. If your income is so high, that by itself doesn't take you out. But your bills, no matter what, are so low, then unfortunately that's the only candidate that would not go on Medicaid.
Yeah, it makes sense. So if anybody would like to talk to Mr. Saperstein, get any more information from his one of his partners or himself, his phone number is 516-472-7030. He'd like me to give out his cell phone, but I don't think I should do that. Thank you for tuning in to the Dana and Dr. Pearl Show. I'm your host, Dana Arnone. We'll see you next time, Long Island.